So when you go out and shoot your landscape shots, is it worth bracketing your images? In today's video, I'm going to show you the difference between processing bracketed images versus processing only one image in your shoot. Hi, I'm Tom Sloan. I'm a landscape and portrait photographer. And in today's video, I'm going to show you how I made this image. And I'm going to process it two ways. First, I'm going to take the 3 bracketed exposures that I took of this and run it through Lightroom through the HDR merge function. And then I'll do an edit on that photo. I'll then take the results of that and compare it to just taking that zero exposure compensation image that was part of that 3 photo set. And I will process it through my typical editing workflow and then compare the results. If you find this video useful, please hit the like and subscribe and leave any comments down below. So let's hop right into the edit. These are the 3 photos that I captured, the images that I captured of the Spirit of the Marathon statue in Hopkinton. And these were bracketed. This is the normal exposure at 0 compensation. This is a negative 1.7, and this is a positive 1.7. So I bracketed those in my camera. And now what I want to do is highlight the 3 photos. And I'm going to use the photo merge feature to HDR in Lightroom to bring these together. Photo merge, HDR. It'll open up a dialog box where I have some options. Auto align, I'm going to click that anyway, just in case there was a little bit of movement. I'm going to do auto settings. Typically I don't, but just to speed the video editing along here, I'm going to include that, and Lightroom generally does a good job. And I found that high on deghost amount leaves fewer artifacts from the merge, so I'm going to leave that on, and I'm just going to click the merge. Okay, so Lightroom has done its processing of the merged image, and as you can see, it's a lot brighter. It looks like it's captured a lot of the details. I'm going to go into that now. What settings Lightroom chose to do the auto. And actually, it's a lot of the same things I would have done in terms of bringing down the highlights, opening up the shadows, finding white point, a little bit of clipping, but not much. And you can see the black, just little areas of clipping. Not too much of a problem. I usually do the vibrance. It did up the exposure a bit, and I think that looks pretty good. The histogram looks nice and evenly spread out. So at this point, I'm going to do a crop on this image. I want to get rid of this building in the background and just focus in on the statue and this starburst here, or the sunburst. So I'm going to go into the crop tool, and I'm going to pull this over so we get rid of that building. And I want to just straighten this out a little bit. I can see it's not, it's a little bit tilted. So I'm just going to take the ruler, and then here, that looks good. I'm going to bring this up a little bit. So we'll start right there. And I think that's good. It puts the statue in rule of thirds up here, and I like the starburst here, and we're getting the detail showing on this statue of these figures. So close that down. I'm going to zoom in here just to take a look at some of the detail. Actually, it looks pretty good. A little bit of noise, but not too bad. It's done a nice job pulling out the detail. I don't see too many artifacts. I'm going to clean up this coloring that the lens did and some of these spots here. So next thing I'm going to do is remove some of these spots, dust spots that were on the image, and then some of the strange coloring that came out of the lens. It's kind of hard when you're shooting into the sun. You're going to get things like that happen from time to time. So I'll just clean these up. Okay, so I think I've done all of the cleanup that I wanted to do with the spot healing brush. So I'll close that down. Next thing I want to do here on this image is just add a little bit more color to the sky and maybe bring down the clarity on these clouds. So I'm going to create a mask. I'll click on the sky. Lightroom will go off and do its thing. Okay, so in this case, I want to bring down the clarity. I want those clouds to be a little softer. And I do want to add a little bit of dehaze, a little bit of saturation. And I'm going to cool down the sky a little bit. So it's fairly subtle. Let's take a look at that. So that's before. And that is after. And I like that effect. I like bringing down the clarity on the clouds, just soften those up a bit. Okay, so the other thing I want to do is I want to create a little pop in this sunburst here. So I'm going to use a radial filter on this. Radial gradient. I'm going to add a little bit of warmth to this. I don't want to go too far. A little bit, and I want to actually add some haze to this. Usually I'm going the other way on the dehaze, but you can see, I'll show you extreme. That's not what you want, but it's a good way of adding haze back into your image. Sliding that dehaze back. So let's turn it off and on. You click that on, hold it down. This new feature that was introduced where you can affect the individual adjustments that you do in the basic panel. I'm gonna bring that down just a little bit more. I think I like that. And then what I want to do is brighten up this with a radial filter just a little bit on the statue. So I'm going to add another radial gradient. I'm just going to brighten that up just a touch. Right there. That looks good. And then I'm going to add just one more mask here, and I'm going to do this on the statue. I want to highlight that, so I'm going to use the objects tool in Lightroom, and this I'm going to create an object mask, and so I'm just going to go trace over this. You don't have to be exactly precise. It generally does a good job identifying what you want. In this case, I just want the statue, and let's see. Okay, so you can see it's done a nice job highlighting that. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit, maybe come out a bit. So now that we have this mask here, the object mask defined, I'm just going to bump up the exposure just a little bit and the highlights. The skosh just to highlight that a little bit. And I'm going to move the temperature up on this. And that's obviously too far, but just slightly. Let me pull back on that. I think I'll take down the exposure. Leave the highlights there. I think that looks good. Okay, so I'm going to turn all these masks off just so that we can see before the changes and after. And with it on. Okay. Last thing I want to do is I want to clean up this, a little bit of a challenge for the lens to correct that. And I'm going to put a brush on that just to take down this. We've got auto mask on, so it should do a good job cleaning this up on this area. So I don't like that. I find it's a little distracting, the green tone that it created. So I'll bring down the exposure a little bit and bring down the saturation. And I think that's a little bit better. Let's take a look. There we go. Okay. Okay, so we're all done with the masks here. So what I want to do now is add a little bit of contrast, and I'm just going to use the medium contrast, the preset. I like how that came out. Next, I want to add just a little bit of vignette on this. Something like that. And last thing I'm going to do here is on the calibration, I'm going to add the blue saturation. I'm going to set it to 50. Just to get a little pop of color in this. Here's the before. And here's the after for the calibration channel. So you can see it's really changed the greens, the blues as well. And so that's as much as I want to do to this image. And now let me show you the before and after of this. This is, I'm going to hit the backslash key. That's the before. Now this is the DNG that came out of the HDR image, so a lot of detail in here that I was able to recover. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to edit the zero compensation, the photo that had a exposure compensation of 0, and then we're going to compare it to what we just did with the merged HDR image. So I'm going to go into that edit, go into the develop module, and start that edit. I'm not going to go into the details, so I'm going to speed this up and I'll show the result at the end. Okay, so there we have the image that I tried to replicate all of the changes that I made in the merged image. So now what I want to do is I want to go back and compare the two. I'm going to go back into the grid view. So we're back here in the grid view, and the images look very similar. I think I did a decent job getting them close to where they were. Can't be exactly sure without copying all those settings over, but oh, let me just click on the original or the 0 compensation image that was part of the original 3. And so let me click on the, so we can compare the two. So I'm holding control down so that we've got these two images, and we're going to go into the compare view. I'm going to get rid of side panels so that we can go into detail. So really what I want to show you is what I can see already is there is a significant difference in the image to the left, the original from the 3, the one of the 3, the 0 compensation, exposure compensation. And I'm going to hold down the control, and this will allow me to zoom in, and I want to show you what this looks like when you compare the two. So if you look to the left and the right, I love this view, there's a lot more noise in the image on the left. And so this would have been a lot darker and harder for the camera and Lightroom to get the detail out of that. It's still pretty good, but if you compare it to the image on the right, which was the HDR merge, this would have taken the overexposed image, which had a nice lighting on the foreground, and you're getting a lot more detail from this image. And you can see it down here too. A lot of noise in it. Overall, it did a pretty good job. So, you know, not bad if you know, so you could get away with that. You wouldn't want to try and print this. So I can see here that I didn't clean up the dust spots, but that's not as important as just recognizing that, this was, to me, a good exercise just to prove my conclusion here is that it's worth it to take bracketed shots, that as good as cameras are and as good as the photo processing is, you're going to retain more detail, especially if you have a wide range of light, like an image like this where you're shooting into the sun and you're going to get a lot of darker spots on your image or darker places in your image. So a really high range where you have bright and very dark images. So I hope you found this exercise useful. I just wanted to prove to myself it's worth taking those multiple images and bracketing your landscape photos. And I know folks do this in real estate too. It really does make a significant difference to the overall quality of the images that you end up processing and putting out there. So I think I hope you found this helpful. Now, just so you know, in my landscape, I've gone away from doing 3 images. I typically do 2 images, one that's optimized for the foreground, one that's optimized for the sky. So I hope you found that video useful, and please hit the like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.